Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Village Board of Trustees meeting. It is December 3rd, 2012, and I'd like to welcome all of you. And this evening, we're very fortunate to have some Cub Scouts visiting from Dryden School to present our colors and lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. We have Christian Ferguson, Nolan Hamilton, Pranon Madden, Nathan Walter, Charlie Malick, Louis Malick, Jack Barch, Christopher Zambolas, and Christopher Rodriguez. They're accompanied by their leaders, Brian Ferguson, Rob Hamilton, and Philip Walter. Gentlemen, you may begin.
Color guards, attention. Will the audience please rise? Color guards, forward march. Halt. Color guards, post the colors.
Just clear.
Color guards, salute your colors. I now invite the audience to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Two. Color guards, return to ranks. Color guards, about face. Dismissed. The audience may now be seated.
I think these new young leaders deserve a great round of applause. We certainly thank PAC 129 again from Dryden Elementary School. Those young men grow up so fast, but we really thank them for helping us honor our flag. I would ask if the clerk would please call the roll.
Trustee Hayes.
Here.
Trustee Rosenberg.
Here.
Trustee Scaletta.
Here.
Trustee Sidor.
Here.
Trustee Blackwood.
Here.
Trustee Breyer.
Here.
Trustee Farwell.
Here.
Trustee Glasgow.
Here.
President Mulder.
Here. I'd like to just point out before we continue with our agenda that there are copies of the agenda at the back of the room, and if you see a blue card, we respectfully request that you complete one of these if you wish to address the village board. Once you complete it, it asks what item you want to make comment on, or if it's under citizens to be heard, simply indicate so. Then bring it up here to the desk where our clerk is, and she'll get it up to us. Thank you. We now move to item 4 on our agenda, and we have 2 sets of minutes. First, the approval of minutes of our Committee of the Whole meeting held November 13th. I'd ask if there are any comments, corrections, deletions, or additions.
Move approval.
Second.
The motion by Trustee Farwell, seconded by Trustee Blackwood. Any other comments? Trustee Glasgow.
Mayor, I'd just make an amendment to reflect that I was not there, and I will pass.
Okay, note the pass. And Trustee Scaletta?
Passes.
Pass as well. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next, we have the approval of minutes of the Board of Trustees meeting of November 19th, 2012. Again, comments, corrections, deletions, or additions?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by trustee Glasgow, seconded by trustee Sidor. Any other comments?
Pass.
No, pass for trustee Scaletta. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Well, I have a great announcement for everyone this week. We have a new mayor. Michael, would you please stand up? And I think we should all greet our mayor from, well, I'm going to let him tell you all about him. We have our student mayor shadowing us this week, and welcome Michael Smith. Michael, Mike is all yours.
Hi, I'm from Thomas Middle School, and we have a class there called Career Connections, and they take the field that you're interested in, and the teachers find somebody that you could job shadow for the week, and I got paired with Mayor Mulder, so, yeah.
We should have asked him this morning. He was at the airport. He's learning all about runways and all kinds of things. So we're keeping him real busy, and he's a great young man. And I think this is maybe, I'm looking at Tom O'Rourke, 10 years or 12 years that this program has been going on. And I think I've had a shadow at least one a year. A couple of years I had two. So it's a great program. I know some shadow bankers. I know they've been in and around. So it's a great thing. So we'll now go to item 5, which is the approval of accounts payable. I don't think you can vote though. Okay. Well, maybe we'll add them. Okay. Approval of accounts payable dated November 30th. I'd call on trustee Hayes.
Thank you, Madam President. I would move approval of the payables dated November 30th, 2012 in the amount of $952,668.80.
Second.
Motion by trustee Hayes, seconded by trustee Farwell. Any comments from the board? Anyone in the audience? See none, roll call.
Trustee Hayes?
Yes.
Trustee Farwell?
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood?
Yes.
Trustee Breyer?
Yes.
Trustee Glasgow?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
President Mulder?
Yes. Do we have representatives from Prospect High School Marching Knights? I think I'm looking for the director. Is this Chris? All right. Chris, can you introduce, is it Destiny Duray? Duray? And Ted Marsoff? Yep. Okay, you guys are all supposed to be 6 or 7 feet tall if you're the drum majors, right? One of the things, those of you who may not have attended our meetings prior to this, is that we like to recognize our students within the Village of Arlington Heights whenever they attain third or best at the state level in many competitions. I'm still seated here because I think that you have accomplished so much. It would take me a long time. Prospect has always been known for its band, and we had a long time, so we're expecting about 25, 30 years out of you.
So far.
I think more. How long was Mr. Morrison
He was
there?
29.
He was 29 years. I don't know what it is about Prospect, but they're very musical and talented. They've been named the Illinois Class 5A state champions. They won second place overall out of 45 school bands competing for the 46th State of Illinois Invitational Marching Band Championships at ISU. They have continued to win. And their latest win follows the Marching Knights' previous first-place championship award in the 2012 competitive marching band season. So I guess you march up and down that field?
We do a lot of that.
Oh, okay. It's fantastic what you've done. One of the things that I see here, and it might be in this proclamation I'm going to read to give to you, the band was named grand champion among a field of 23 Midwestern bands at the 45th Annual Chicagoland Marching Band Festival. This is a group of of unique students who probably are all excellent students as well. They obviously take instruction.
Sure do.
And we think of athletic teams and athletes as being parts of teams, but so is a band. And if you're out of step, you're in trouble. So I very much want to read this so all of our audience and those at home will appreciate all that you've done. The Village of Arlington Heights is very pleased to give this proclamation recognizing the Prospect High School Marching Knights this December 3rd, 2012. Whereas Arlington Heights is proud that School District 214's Prospect High School Marching Knights has had such an outstanding competition season, garnering championships or top placement spots at local, state, and regional levels. Whereas some of their many achievements include being named Illinois Class 5A state champion and winning a number of competitions, capturing the High Achievement Award for General Effect in the Class 5A preliminaries, and the grand champion among the field, which I just mentioned. Whereas the time commitment of the students and their director is reflective of the band's can-do spirit that they show on the field and in competition. The Prospect Marching Knights traveled to St. Louis to compete at the Bands of America Super Regional Championship, garnering the highest score among all 15 participating Illinois school bands. They finished third in its class and placed 8th overall in a field of 58 top high school bands representing 12 different states from Texas to Minnesota. Their championships, they are to be recognized as probably our premier high school marching band, and they are noted throughout the United States for their accomplishments. The Prospect Marching Knights are recognized and are led by their drum majors. You're in here, Steve. Destiny Dura and Ted Marsoff and Alex Yu. Where'd Alex Yu come from?
He has a performance tonight with our magical singers.
See, multitasking.
That's right.
I would like to come down and present this to you and thank you very much. Or why don't you come forward? You guys can applaud. It's okay. Oh, we have this picture here. Okay, you guys turn around. We'll do this. Pretend my body is. Congratulations. And do you want to go to the mic and say anything about the students, please?
Or if you want to.
Here's one.
I didn't know I was going to talk, but I just want to thank the village board and the mayor for recognizing the kids. As she said, the students at Prospect High School, for sure, the students in the band program. I've been at Prospect 7 years now, and just see just a number of unbelievable kids come through. They work so hard on their academics and their activities, and music is certainly important to a lot of them and important to a lot of their families. And I know the students and families that go through the Prospect band, we just want them to have a great experience while they're there, and we hope that they really cherish their time, and we just certainly appreciate this recognition today, and I'm glad I was able to bring the students because they're really the ones who do all the hard work. So these are our drum majors, we said, which are our 2 student leaders. So out of the entire band, these are the leaders of the leaders, and they're just great examples of what high school kids can do when they really work hard and put their mind to something. So thank you very much.
I have to teach it to you. Okay. Well, if you're following your agenda, you know that item B under Roman numeral 6 is recognition of the work of the Quasquicentennial Committee. Quasquicentennial is kind of a mouthful, and I think most of our residents know them as the 125 Committee. Several individuals, I think, had no idea when they accepted the invitation to be a part of this group what might have been in store for them. I'd like to ask Lori Harp if she would come up forward. I think I'm going to meet you down there, and I'm going to bring you a mic here.
You know, I didn't do this alone. I have a team.
Well, I want, this one's on. I want Lori Harp to introduce each member, even if they're not here, but hopefully they all are here, and have them come up and join us.
Okay, so by row, Jim Glickert, Robert Paddock Jr., Deb Whistler, Kathy McQuillan, Tom O'Rourke, Haven McClung, who's just had both of her knees replaced, and her husband Gary, Jim Platt, Crystal Seifert, Mike Driscoll, Jerry Suter, and we're missing Chris Stabler. But this was the team that asked you in 2010, September of 2010, to trust us with your celebration. And all of you gave us the green light. Carol, I believe it was your motion. Gave us the green light to, and trusted us to come up with something that would involve community and not cost any money. And I think we did that.
Yes, their tribute really goes to the businesses within our community that were really ready to step up at the plate. Now, you know, I kept saying, well, we've got to get something special for each of these people. They really put their life on hold, and we're on the call, because if you've ever worked with her, when she calls, you better show up, right? They worked unbelievably hard, and we talk about the 12 months. We started at the tree lighting in 2011 and concluded at the tree lighting 2012. However, I believe Lori Harp started 13 months before that date at putting together this team and putting forth the plans of who's going to do what. And I think she found probably the most talented people we have in the village of Arlington Heights. If you think that name Suter sounds good, well, that's because you've been reading articles. He's quite a published author, and he's done a lot of good things. Without the library, could we do anything? And then you have this business sense. You know, it just goes on and on with what each one can give. I mean, you know, my Sylvia's guy who always fixes my plants, you know, I still make him come and tell me why one's leaning over funny, but, you know, and you know, Crystal, Gary, Haven, you know, Tom, you just keep going on and on. We tried to get them to take something, and they said, we want no plaques, we want nothing. We wanted the privilege to do it. They got a shirt, you know, if they didn't lose it, okay, a couple of, you know, all right. You know, it happens. It's at the bottom of the drawer. You just have
They worked harder than anybody else. They wore out their shirts.
But thanks to the generous sponsors, and if you remember, you saw a lot of banners. They're still up, I believe. And you certainly saw the trains. People sponsored those, and that's what helped fund the entire celebration. It's amazing what they did. I don't know if any of you have something that you wish to share.
I'll never give him the mic, or you'll never give it back. The one thing I think, speaking for the group, we hope and think this is our last meeting or close to it. Maybe we'll have a celebration. The second thing is, I think our hats off are off to literally and figuratively to Lori. You know, you've got a diverse group of people trying to get them all to come together for meetings, to actually follow through on what they said they would do, and to do it without browbeating. They did. Everybody is still here. We still love you. And I just want to say thank you for the helping us have this opportunity.
Come on, You can't all be shy. Okay. Ditto, ditto, ditto. I think we had an incredible chairman here. You know, I hope everyone had an opportunity to see some of the trains. We have one here at Village Hall on the first floor. But it was a great opportunity to involve the citizens, to learn maybe for the first time a little bit about the history. And 125 years old, there's not a lot. And actually we were founded as a community by different names. Dunton, most prevalent, was the one of the three names for the first 51 years. Before our founding fathers just realized they had to go to Springfield and tell them that we were here. And they wanted to be Arlington, but there was already an Arlington in Illinois, so they decided they were the Heights. So a few residents have asked me where the mountains are, but we haven't found them yet. But you have significantly made a difference, I think, in the knowledge of the average resident about our rich history, about our train, how it got here, what Mr. Dunton did. Throughout the year, Marge Frisbee and her husband did a fantastic thing at the prayer breakfast last February in talking about how the role of the churches and how important the churches were in developing this community and how they disagreed a lot, you know, and they didn't like each other, but they all made Arlington better. And I have to mention the business community that really came forth on their business support for the Costco Centennial, and that's Arlington Park Racetrack, the Lutheran Home, Village Bank and Trust, Union Pacific, Mariano's, Javier's, Dros Kivlehan, McMahon and O'Connor, Glickard Funeral Home, Visual Edge, Daily Herald, Frontier Days Festival, Heller Lumber, Mitchell Jewelers, and Northwest Speech and Hearing. These individuals really helped fund all of these activities, but the real dedication and the talent came from these individuals, and they just didn't want anything. Tom, you want to come over and help me, because I need to pass something out here. On behalf of all of our residents, the Village Board members, who you can't see right now because they're behind the committee, but we truly want to thank you for your gift, the gift of time. And all of us know when we have to run out for a meeting or do something or be part of an event, you're not with your family, or you're not doing some of the chores that are calling at home. You truly gave up part of your life for the past 15 or 16 months to make the life of our residents in the village of Arlington Heights more fun, more knowledgeable, and more learned, I think we all are. And in recognizing our history, I think you've actually set the bar pretty high. And I wish you my heartfelt thanks for your hard work, dedication, commitment, and yes, thank you for the gift of celebration and telling us how we got here. But now you set the challenge for whoever's going to do the 150.
I promised them.
Okay. We got to keep history alive. And Tom, if you would like to, let's see, this one goes to Lori. We'll start with you. We gave them two things, even though you said you wanted nothing. One is a thank you mug, and the other is a logo pin. You're now really, truly a part of the village of Arlington Heights. Thank you so much. And if we all please join me in thanking them.
Thank you.
I don't know.
It's like a receiving.
Now, Michael, see, it's not all hard work. You know, you get to do some fun things every once in a while, too. Thank you again, and now they're all going to go home and do the dishes, right? But truly, the Quasco Centennial exceeded any expectations that I know I had personally, and there will be some more memorabilia placed throughout the Village Hall. We had a wonderful flag. Our actual birthday was January 18th, and we had a Arlington Heights resident that was in Iraq, and he sent us a flag that he flew January 18th, 2012, and that was Court Harris, Representative David Harris's son. And so that's getting framed, and we're going to be putting that. So we have lots of things in history to remember, and we wish the next group at 25 years to do something. That concludes our recognitions. We have no public hearings. And Michael, how are we doing on these blue cards? Rand. Is there anyone here for citizens to be heard? I'm seeing all my blue cards for an agenda item. Okay, thank you. We now are moving along to our consent agenda. And I'd ask first if there are any trustees who wish to vote no or pass on any items. For those of you in the audience, the items on page 3 and 4 are contained on the consent agenda. Is there any trustee on any item that would like to have removed from the consent agenda and considered separately? Trustee Sidor.
Thank you, Mayor Mulder. I'd like to remove legal number 2 from the consent agenda.
Legal number 2?
Legal 2, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Sidor. Any citizens in the audience would like to remove any of the items for discussion? Yes, sir.
Cards. Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yes, it is. I'm sorry, I should have said that. 2 is the ordinance amending the zoning ordinance of the Village of Arlington Heights, referencing the Rand Road Medical Office at 1501 West Rand Road. Seeing no one else in the audience?
I move approval of the remaining items on the consent agenda.
A motion by Trustee Hayes.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Rosenberg. Roll call, please.
Trustee Hayes.
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg.
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta.
Yes.
Trustee Sidor.
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood.
Yes.
Trustee Breyer.
Yes.
Trustee Farwell.
Yes.
Trustee Glasgow.
Yes.
President Mulder.
Yes. I think if I could ask for a motion to perhaps amend the agenda and take item 2 from legal and address it now before going into our new business items, as legal is last on our agenda. So
moved.
Second.
motion by Trustee Hayes, seconded by Trustee Sidor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. For those in the audience, we're taking up Legal 2, which is on page 3. Mr. Dixon, do you want to open us up on this discussion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. At its November 19 meeting, the Village Board discussed this proposed development. One of the questions raised at the public meeting was whether the petitioner has interest from prospective tenants. Following the Village Board meeting, a resident raised concerns also about the possibility of the site being cleared prior to the petitioner having signed leases. Once the ordinance for the development is adopted, and that could happen tonight, in fact, that's what's scheduled tonight, the developer could move forward with site clearing and submit and receive approval for a grading permit, but not move forward with constructing the building. We have no indication that's going to happen, but I'm just identifying what could happen. The board may want to consider the following condition to be added to the ordinance. Essentially, it would say that no site clearing shall be permitted without written permission from the village. Such permission will not be granted any earlier than the issuance of a building permit for construction of the new building. In addition, no grading permit shall be issued prior to the issuance of a building permit for the construction of the new building. That's a suggested addition to the ordinance that's before you this evening based on some of the concerns that were raised since the November 19 meeting. It was our understanding late last week from the petitioner's attorney that this proposed condition or something similar is agreeable to the petitioner.
Is the petitioner present? Okay, all right. Just for the record, if you could identify yourself.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Bernard Citron, the law firm of Thompson Coburn. I've been before this board before. My associate was here at the last meeting. We also have the owners of the property here today who can answer any further questions. Mr. Dixon is correct. The point being here is we wouldn't go ahead with the building permits on this property until we know that there are tenants for the property. We are having discussions as late as, or as early as tomorrow with some of those potential tenants. So we wouldn't go to the time and expense of having construction drawings done, permit drawings done, until such time as we were ready to move forward on this. And I believe the doctor's here who can further address this if there's any questions on that issue.
Name and address, please.
Hi, Mayor. My name is Henry Dominicis. I'm a physician in the building currently, and I live in Long Grove, Illinois.
We do have some residents that want to ask some questions before the board takes any action, so stay close by.
Thank you.
We'll start with William Bailey. Name and address.
Yes, William Bailey, 1108 West Alex Street. I just want to make a few comments for the board to really think about. Our neighbors, obviously, were against this project. We don't necessarily think it's friendly to the neighbors. I want to go after a couple facts here. One, 1979, this property had an ordinance 68-136 on file, which stated first floor was 17,506 square feet. The basement was 16,249 square feet. And the use of the basement was restricted to storage only. That was in 1979. In 2001, 22 years later, a building permit was granted to build out the basement. The plans called out for the build-out of medical space, conference rooms, and the continued storage. There was no change to the ordinance 68-136 of 1979. In 2001, a building permit was approved for the expansion of the parking lot. Of course, they added more office space, so there was a requirement for more parking. Again, no change to the ordinance number 68-136 of 1979. 2001 to today, the basement has been historically used for medical office space, testing labs, imaging facilities such as x-rays and possible MRIs. Again, no change to ordinance 68-136 of 1979. The first request to change this was in 2011, 32 years later, and 10 years of using the basement for the purposes that the ordinance did not permit. And that ordinance was 68-136 in 1979. Northwest Community Hospital relocated their imaging facilities from the basement of 1051 Rand Road to a building at 199 Rand Road in Mount Prospect, a building in which Northwest Community Hospital purchased and owned, timeline within the last 3 to 4 years. The healthcare market in our area, or the medical office building, or otherwise called MOB, in Arlington Heights is saturated. Signs of that are by medical buildings up and down Rand Road that are vacant. Some of them new, some of them old, but vacant. Typically, when the hospital is involved with the project, they have representatives alongside the petitioners. I wonder if we've checked both the short-term and long-term plans, strategic intentions of our local hospital to use this site as suggested by the petitioner as their north campus.
I need you to wrap up.
Okay.
3 minutes, I forgot to warn you.
You know what, and I'm good. I think I got my point across. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Jerry Teets? 3 minutes, I think I remember.
3 minutes?
Yeah, it'll help you with your name and address.
Thanks. Jerry Teets, 1109 West Alex Street, 20-year Arlington Heights resident. At last month's board meeting, you all put careful thought and analysis into your collective decision to vote against this project. You listened, you asked really good questions, you were given this huge packet ahead of time to review. You did a great job reviewing it, and you ended up voting no for the project. And you put a good deal of time into it. I would estimate that all of you have at least 100 years of combined experience in these matters. You're really good at what you do, and that's why you're up there. So we had 8 smart and experienced people vote against this project at the last board meeting. And then I saw something that I just couldn't believe, and I haven't seen in my 25 years of business, which is a high-ranking Arlington Heights official get up and tell you that you are making a mistake and that you'll regret this decision. Is that a fair process? Is that fair? I've been asking myself all week, and no, it's not fair. During this whole process, we've never had an advocate. We don't have a traffic consultant, an architect, a lawyer, a general contractor. We just have us, just residents that really care a lot about our neighborhood and the other 2 neighborhoods around this. By voting against this tonight, you can send a message to the Arlington Heights residents that the village does in fact have a fair process in these matters. And what we're asking you to do tonight is not out of the realm of what you believe in. Right on the Arlington Heights website, I noticed a section called Philosophy of Elected Officials. Right on it, I won't restate all of them, but a lot of it has to do with listening to residents and responding to residents' needs. Tonight, we need your help to be our advocate in this matter. And we would ask for your consideration in order to make this a fair process. If you can't see yourself to a no on this, we'd again ask your help for those 7 spaces that are due to be paved and hashed, and we would really appreciate the extra 16 by 63 feet of green space to help with the noise and the screening. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Jerry. Mark Germano?
Good evening, Mayor, Village Trustees. My name is Mark Germano. I live at 1202 West Kelly Street, Arlington Heights. My wife and I have been 13-year residents at that location. It is directly west of the current Women's Center operated by our local hospital. The proposed site will be southeast of our location, and it's what I have witnessed over the last 13 years in the development of that particular site and what I've seen transpire, which is beyond ordinance, beyond enforcement, but is the way humans operate, is I've seen the employees as well as the patrons of the Women's Center come behind the bush, the current 8-foot bushes, and use the retention pond, which is to our which faces our home, as their personal ashtray and garbage site. After hours, a number of cars with occupants come in, park, and do a variety of activities until one of the Arlington Heights police officers drives past. How will that transpire in the new site? It would be virtually impossible to expend the cost associated with constantly policing another parking lot, which is larger than needed, after business hours. I'm not sure if the employees and the patrons of the proposed site will engage in the same kind of behavior as the current employees and patrons of the current Women's Center. Assuming the supply of law and demand takes place and holds true here in Arlington Heights, the current properties are unoccupied and are available. Directly east of the current site, there are 5 unoccupied sites at Huntington Square at 1018, 1020, 1022, 1038, and 1044 Rand Road. In the Seasons Center, there are 10 vacant offices, professional medical offices at 129, 131, 133, 135, 137, 143, 145, 147, 149, and 151 Rand Road. And the Arlington Plaza on the east side of Rand Road by the Wendy's restaurant has 43,000 square feet of available office space. I'd ask you to vote no on the proposed zoning amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Dave Stutzman?
Good evening. I'm Dave Stutzman, 1104 West Alex Street, Arlington Heights. 2 weeks ago this evening, I stood up in front of you as well as some of my neighbors, and we continued to voice the same issue, concern. And so based on the feedback that we provided you and the concern as overall citizens of Arlington Heights, I think you can get the sense for the passion that we have about this proposed project in our opposition to move forward. And from my perspective, without having to be redundant and go over all the individual aspects of why we're opposed to this particular project, for me it boils down to about 4 or 5 basic items, of which I want to reiterate to you this evening and again. First of all, we recognize the fact that the developer has a right to develop the land. We're not disputing that and the use of the land. For me, personally, it's what's being proposed and being constructed on this property site that typically you would expect to see that type of construction in an industrial area, not something which is close to residential that would bump up against our property lines and be looking at a 2-story complex, which would be adjacent to already an existing single-story building. That is going to bump up against our properties. And yes, one of our major issues and concern is the value of our homes. We've got a sizable investment, all of us, in the value of our properties. We continue to maintain, and we continue to want to make sure that our investments in our properties continue to appreciate in the short and the long term. And by putting this type of construction and replacing all the green space in a nice wooded lot area and replacing it with nothing but more than over 300 stalls of asphalt is not what I would call a win-win situation. It's more a win for the developer and not a win proposition for the homeowners in the residency. Secondarily, I think it's been brought up, the fact that there's other ancillary type of issues, the noise, the traffic, the security, I feel could be potentially jeopardized as a result of bringing in a lot more traffic than currently what exists today in this proposed site. And I would again ask you to reconsider this proposition and to take a look at just exactly what is actually proposed, being constructed, and how it's going to be affecting the homeowners in Greenwood Place, as well as other residents around the area that are going to be negatively impacted by this proposition, and reconsider that, and then make it a win-win situation for everybody in being good neighbors for both the petitioner as well as all of the neighbors in the area. So again, I would ask that you reconsider. We stand very firm about our position in opposition to this project, and we hope that you potentially take that in consideration again this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. And our final request to speak is Chuck Schwartz.
My name is Chuck Sturtz. I live at 1014 Allegheny. 1014 Allegheny is at the very southeast tip of the property. My wife and I have lived here at that address for 44 years. We've seen a lot happen in the area in terms of traffic, in terms of development. From our perspective, the medical building is probably the best use that you can have in this, on this property, from a standpoint that the hours are normal daytime hours as opposed to a fast food which might be operating 18 hours a day. However, much of the sound barrier between us and Rand Road is being removed in order to accommodate the parking lot and the building. So what we ask is that the sound barrier that the developer is going to be putting in be improved so that there is more short-term benefit to those of us who live adjacent to the property. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck, very much. I know that the buffer, and that concludes. Was there anyone else that sent up? No, okay. That concludes the public comment on this. I would ask staff if they could review what I know we made some changes at the last meeting to try to take into account some of the concerns, and the developers tonight have agreed to the stipulation that they would not remove and clear that, because it might be 2, 3, whatever years before you have potential clients that you know that you can build.
Actually, I don't think it's going to be 2 or 3 years. I mean, we're
I know you
far
hope for
more,
2 or 3 months.
But the answer is we've agreed to the condition that we won't start clearing the site until we're ready to build, which is what everybody is saying. If in fact we disagree that there is a space like this, Dr. Dominicis can discuss how they're one of the largest or the largest medical practices at Northwest Community and how that will draw people just to this facility, if that's important here. In terms of buffers, we had agreed to the 10 space or the 7 spaces going out. That was agreed to the last time. I know there was a little confusion on it, and staff can go over what the barrier or the buffers are, but we've increased our buffer to the point where you can't plant anymore at these locations. So we have done everything we can to more than meet the village standards for this. And as pointed out by the last speaker, you know Rand Road better than we know Rand Road. This is your town. You know what's along Rand Road in terms of other uses, even if they're multifamily uses, which again are 24-hour uses and cars coming in and out, or if they're commercial uses, retail uses. This is the lowest impact commercial use you could possibly have. As even office buildings go, it is the lowest impact. Your comprehensive plan says that's the use on this property. We have met every single standard. The standards that you're being asked to apply are not the type of standards that I've ever seen this board do in the past, which is you have to have a tenant before you build. But even without that, we've agreed to that, even with that statement. I mean, people build office buildings up and down the village. People build retail up and down the village, and the question is not asked, do you have the tenants for that space? But the fact is we will have the tenants because we're not going to build without them. So when you factor in what we've agreed to do and continue to agree to do, And the fact is, we've agreed to that condition. The fact is, your own code say, that this board voted on, said, this is the use for this property. We believe the vote should be yes, as it was at the end of the meeting. I disagree, I'm sorry, that this was an unfair process. Everybody has been heard. The only thing that's fair or unfair depends on your point of view, whether you're on the yes side or the no side. But that does not make the process unfair. We just went through an election in this country. No one's questioning that that was an unfair election. It is what it is. You vote. But the fact is we have listened. Now, we haven't listened 100%. That's correct. Maybe we haven't listened to 90%. I'll leave that up to you to decide how much we have listened. But we have listened. We have put in the extra buffers. Everybody has had multiple occasions to express their concerns. It's not unfair that we have a traffic consultant. Your ordinance requires us to do that, to determine if there's a traffic issue. Your ordinance requires that there be presentations before the Appearance Review Commission. I disagree in terms of this building. I'm sorry that people say it's industrial. This is not the type of building or use you'd put next to industrial. At least your own consultants have indicated, or your own board has indicated, quote, it's a handsome building. It's a good-looking building. This is not an industrial building, the fact that it's made out of precast. That's a very expensive material. That's not an inexpensive material. We're not building it out of plywood. So we have done everything we can do. If you want to hear on the tennis issue and why we think that this will be a very successful building, otherwise we wouldn't have bought the property, I can ask Dr. Dominicis to come forward. But if not, we have met all the standards required for this to be approved, and we've gone above and beyond that. So unlike the other speakers, we are asking for that yes vote to continue this evening. The process was fair. We've done what we've been asked to do. We've done additional each time we've been asked to do more. We have done more. And I think that's the fair thing to do, is to approve a use that's called out for under your own ordinance, your own plans, that is the lowest intensity commercial use that you will have on Rand Road. A medical office building that is not open at night, that is not open other days of the week. To say that this property should remain single-family residential, no one ever planned for that. People took advantage of that a little bit, but no one ever planned for that. We thank you, and we stand ready to answer any further questions that the board may have.
I can go to the board. Is there anything that staff wants to add at this point? Okay, we had an agreement to no clearing or development until permission from the village and signed leases, plural, not just one.
No, my understanding of the condition is that we wouldn't clear until we pull a building permit for the entire project. We wouldn't ask for a land development permit and a site grading permit until we have...
Leases too, though.
That was not the condition, no.
There's no lease restriction in there. We've never done a restriction on a lease unless it's been in a redevelopment agreement in one of our TIF districts where the village has some financial commitment to the project. So typically,
I was reading the paragraph before, which sounded a little more conducive to our neighbors, but, okay, thank you, Trustee Rosenberg. All right, I'll go to Trustee Farwell.
Before we go much further this evening, I just kind of want to set the record straight on the no vote to the yes vote.
Yeah, it was 4-4.
Yeah, it wasn't that you had 8 people vote against the situation. You had a motion to for the approval of the project. You had 4 people vote in favor of it, and you had 4 people vote against it. So therefore, technically speaking, the motion fails. But you still had 4 in favor and 4 against. So you didn't have 8 against it. So, and that very rarely happens where we have a stalemate. It was just one of those nights where we had 8 people as opposed to 9 people. And the reason why it went to a vote was because a question was called. So when that happens, essentially you end up having to vote on the situation before possibly even all the deliberation was done. Now, we just passed minutes of that meeting earlier this evening, and I just want to read 2 different excerpts from it, and it might flesh the issue out a little bit more. Immediately after the calling of that question, and the vote was 4 up and 4 down, so technically the vote failed. Trustee Rosenberg said that he voted no because the motion still had 6-foot-tall trees versus 9-foot-tall trees. He said he wanted 9-foot in the motion anywhere there is a home. He also wanted the conditions of hashing the 7 parking spaces to be listed in a condition. If these points were changed, he would change his vote. And then it goes on. But earlier in that dialogue, those points were already conceded. It was just, they were conceded at a point in time in the deliberations, first of all, so early on, and secondly, so with such brevity that not everybody in the room picked up on the fact that the petitioner actually had already agreed to that. And the motion and the minutes had reflected that. And so half of us picked up on it, half of us didn't, probably because we were listening to the next point or the point before. And then it further was fleshed out by Trustee Glasgow, where he had asked Mr. Brust if he agreed to the 3 stipulations that were added and or changed, increasing the tree size to 9 feet, hash marking the 7-foot southeastern parking spaces, and removing the snow pile within 2 weeks, reducing its size to half of its size. And Mr. Brust said yes. And then subsequently it went to a unanimous vote in favor. It went to a unanimous vote in favor because we were able to flesh out the issues and make sure that all of us had our questions answered at that time. So that's really what happened that evening. And now we are here this evening. So I just kind of wanted to set the record straight before we move forward, because I didn't want people in the room here thinking that that's actually what happened, or the people at home that will be watching us saying, wow, how did they go from 8 no's to 8 yeses? Because that clearly was not the case.
Trustee Glasgow? You cannot call the question.
I was about to address that. I was the one who called the question last time, and that I asked the debate be closed because, in my opinion, everything that we had discussed the secondary time had been discussed and brought out in the open, and that's my fault, and my apologies to my colleagues for closing off debate when each one of them should have been able to continue discussing and ask questions. This is an open forum, and I want my colleagues to get as much information as possible. That being said, the board chose not to reverse itself. The board chose to have further discussion. And we reopened this to discussion. Upon further discussion, it was an 8-0 vote, and it was an 8-0 vote in favor. I would like to just ask some questions of staff. Charles, the petitioner has indicated that this is what was planned for this particular piece of property. How is it currently zoned?
The site's currently zoned R1, which is a residential zoning category that in many cases years ago when a parcel was first annexed into the community, it would be set in an R1, which is the lowest zoning category, until a development plan came forward, and then it would be rezoned to the appropriate zoning classification consistent with the comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan has designated this site as office or commercial for as long as I can recall.
And what sort of businesses can go in here? If we were not to put a medical office, what could we put in there? What would be permissible under the comprehensive plan?
Any kind of office would be allowable under the office designation. So whether it's medical or general office would be permissible. Under the current R1 zoning, you could have a church could go in with no hearings necessary, and they could build a parking lot with virtually no screening. I just wanted to emphasize the code requirement for screening between districts is a 6-foot tall fence or a 6-foot tall hedgerow. And we have many cases throughout town where there is just a fence. The Annex Shopping Center just down the road, adjacent to that is the Enclave and some other residential. Behind their service aisle is just a 6-foot fence. There's no landscaping. We worked with the developer trying to increase the landscaping to address some of the residents' concerns. So not only do you have a 6-foot fence, you have a double row of 9-foot tall spruces. The landscape buffer, especially in front of the 3 homes that currently face the vacant lot, in the existing area you see parking. That parking was removed to allow a wider extra landscape area. In addition, there are restrictions on hours of operation. There's restrictions on when the lights can turn off. So we took a lot of the input from the residents and tried to make this plan as neighborhood friendly as possible. But you know, medical use is a great use for this location along Rand Road.
Would you agree with the petitioner's assertion that this is the lowest industrial use that can go into this particular area along the comprehensive plan? This has the least amount of impact?
I think office uses in general do. Medical office has a slightly higher trip generation at certain peak times than general office, but office in general is a lower intensity use than commercial or any other use other than residential, obviously.
I just, for the record, for the residents here, I don't believe personally it is the place of government to tell a landlord how they can go about taking care of their building, or once we define the use under the code, or once we define use with regard to zoning, whether it's Northwest Community Hospital or any other tenant. He's a private landowner. He can develop it as he sees fit. It's not my place to intervene in private business, just as it's not my place as a government official to interfere in your private business. I do have some questions for the petitioner, if you could approach. My understanding is the proposed condition is that no site clearing shall be permitted without written permission from the village. Such permission will not be granted any earlier than the issuance of a building permit or construction of the new building in a period. In addition, no grading permit shall be issued prior to the issuance of building permit for the construction of the new building. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
And that's what you have agreed to and your council has agreed to?
Yes, and our intent is not to proceed before we have tenants. It would not be financially responsible to do that, nor would we want to impact that space in a way that would present empty space, an empty building.
And just in the spirit of fair disclosure, I have to disclose to the board, Dr. Dominicis delivered all three of my kids. He was there at their birth. That was 12 years ago for the last one, and that is the last one. But
it's too bad.
Why'd you change topics?
I appreciate Dr. Dominicis has been there. I've known you for probably 25 years, and I have a great deal of trust and respect for Dr. Dominicis. He has, throughout the time that I have known him, and we do not socialize, we don't hang out together, but since I have known you for the past 25 years, I've seen you on and off during the course of the years. Your word has been absolutely good with me. I want to ask you point blank, do you intend to have this building built with tenants in it, or do you intend to build it and then have it half-filled or not leased?
We intend to have it clearly over half full. Will it be 100%? I don't think any building ever is. But we will not build this with 50% tenants only by any means.
And this is your personal funds. This is your business that's going into the investment, correct?
Yes, I am, just to explain, I am one of the physicians that owns the current building. I just happen to be the building physician manager for this. And the reason I was chosen to do this is because being on staff at Northwest Community for the last 22 years, my 4-year term as chairman of the Department of OBGYN, I was responsible for helping develop the south wing of the hospital there. And so my communications and connections, relationships with the hospital allow me to find out from them what their needs are. And since a large part of our current building is the hospital medical group, they have been communicating to me what they need to grow that hospital medical group. And that's the only reason I ever brought up that the hospital was interested, because we're constantly having talks about the needs of the community and their anticipation for increased needs for health care with the upcoming plan that the administration, the federal administration has proposed over the next 4 years. So that's why that came up, not because I have ever brought any of these plans to the hospital. I would never do that without the approval of this board that it was okay for me to even go ahead with this project. It's just the discussion that we have a need in the community and we have a need on this campus because of the services we provide and the fact that there's a lot of ancillary services and other types of subspecialties that need to be close by when either our elderly patients or our patients who are coming in to see my practice with kids want to have in one location to try to make it more efficient for them. So the reason Northwest Community's name even came into that is just because my relationship and my communications with them over the last 20 years. Not because I have any signed leases yet, nor have they committed to anything. But I would not go on with a project like this without having the majority of this building leased out, because financially, that wouldn't make sense. And quite frankly, myself and my partners are too busy to dive into a project like this as a speculation type project. We're not builders, we're not developers, we're just trying to provide more medical services in Arlington Heights.
Can I just question Petitioner's Counsel momentarily? You had indicated during your presentation regarding concessions that have been made to the residents. Could you just list those off for the members of the audience that weren't here at the last meeting and the people at home?
Well, starting with, as Mr. Perkins mentioned, we pulled out a whole row of parking along the new property. The second part of that is we doubled the amount of landscaping there. The third part was we were asked to put in taller trees that are normally put in. We put that in. There was some proposals in terms of how the fencing was going to work. We addressed that. I believe the last concession, which was made privately, there's an issue over a willow tree that came up the last time, and we've agreed to take that down. So
It isn't even on the property.
It isn't even on the property, but we'll take care of that. So the 7 parking spaces we took out, we conceded in everything that we could concede to that didn't affect the ability for this project to go forward. We can't make it a one-story building. It wouldn't be feasible to build it. It wouldn't work for the spaces. We can't increase the buffer to the way that was requested because we do need parking. We would have been below the village's requirements. We are slightly above now by a small amount, but I don't believe we're
16 or something.
I think we're just 16 spaces above what would otherwise be required. So that's not, we're less than 10% above what the village would require. And if we listened to what was being asked for, we'd actually be below it, and we'd be asking you for a parking variation, which we know that the village is not real keen on granting on a lot of these type of uses.
One last question, and that's for Charles. This particular project that they have, they've complied with all zoning requirements?
Yes, they have.
And it's just for the PUD?
That's the rezoning and PUD, correct.
Okay. One of the residents brought up with regard to what's on the website, with regard to us. And if you look on that website, my philosophy of an elected official is do the most amount of good for the most amount of people for the most amount of time. I wrote that 4 years ago. I still believe that. And this project meets that expectation for this community. I understand that you guys have bought this, and I respect the fact that you've come out, and that's part of what makes Arlington Heights great. Each one of you has come out and you've voiced your opinion, and you've got to talk about what's going on, and you apparently have been very involved in the process. They've made several concessions, but I do believe that this is the best for everyone in Arlington Heights, and I believe that they are being sensitive to the residents' needs. I would move approval.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Glasgow, seconded by Trustee Hayes. We have a clarification for
With the
staff.
revised condition.
And I just one, yes.
With the additional condition?
Yes, with the additional condition, with the proposed condition that I read into the petitioner, which he agreed to. And just for clarification, I once again extend my apologies to my colleagues for calling the question a bit too early.
We have a question from Mayor Smith here on clarification here. We have a motion and a second. We're going to still, yeah,
I have to agree to that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Mayor Smith?
This medical building, industrial versus office, can the medical building be classified as an industrial building?
No, this is office only. This is not an industrial zoning district.
Good question, Mayor. Okay, now we'll call on Trustee Hayes.
Well, I just wanted to concur with what Trustee Glasgow said in terms of this being the best use for this property. And I think I certainly appreciate the concerns and the passion of the adjacent residents, but I really do think that their concerns have been adequately addressed here. I just wanted to address the other issue of fairness that was addressed this evening, potentially from our last meeting, and that was with respect to the village manager's suggestion that we reconsider our vote. I think Bill might think sometimes that he can influence how we vote, but we are all independent voters and thinkers up here, and we do appreciate being put back on the right track sometimes, and I personally appreciated Bill pointing out the fact that we might want to reconsider based on the fact that there may have been some confusion in terms of the conditions that we're applying to the motion. And so I, for one, appreciated the village manager's effort to get us back on the right track. And again, I think we did all vote independently, so I do think the process was fair.
Mr. Siegel?
Not just because he's my friend, but as the village manager, he's entitled to participate in debate.
Trustee Scaletta?
Charles, it appeared that one of the residents insinuated that the petitioner's in violation by utilizing the basement in their current form. Is that true, or are they?
No, that is correct. Apparently, the 79 ordinance had a restriction that the basement could not be utilized for office use, but just for storage. And then apparently in 2000 or 2001, a permit was issued to build out the basement. The building met the parking, so unfortunately that permit was issued. And then we've not had any complaints, to my knowledge, since then that there have been any issues. And then when this petition was submitted, the research was done and we advised them that they were in violation of that condition. And part of this ordinance is removal of that condition that prohibits the use of the basement for office.
Okay. And Mr. Dixon, I would imagine that that you've looked into this to ensure that something like that doesn't happen again?
Well, I have looked into it. We have talked with staff. In fairness to staff, while there was an oversight, there was also 22 years. And I don't know that there was harm because, as Mr. Perkins points out, it still was within the parking requirements. But shouldn't have happened, and we apologize for that.
Okay. And in the 6 years that I've been on this board, I've never come across that, so that's why I asked the question. I know that we've had a change in department heads in the building department since 2001, so I would imagine that that might have been remedied as well with just the change in leadership. And I'll withhold the rest of my questions for another time, as I want to understand the difference between the comprehensive plan of what we think should go there and what properties are zoned. So I'll bring that up at a different time.
Okay, Trustee Rosenberg, did you want to make some comments?
Sure. Just to also clarify, last time, as Trustee Farwell had read, the reason I voted against it was because the conditions that I wanted to have in there were not, even though the petitioner had agreed to them, they were not in writing. So that was the reason that I voted no. Had those conditions been listed formally in writing or had been changed, then I would have had a yes vote. But, you know, I agree with the other comments that were made. I think the petitioner has done a lot to try to accommodate the residents, and I understand their position, but I feel that this is also a good use for the property, and with the 9-foot trees and the hashing of the spaces and the fence, and I think it's been a good accommodation by the petitioner for that. And I also understand that they're not going to construct a facility without having the proper tenants. I mean, there may be a point in time where they may lose tenants and maybe they are vacant more than they had hoped to be, but I think the intention of the petitioner is to try to fill that space because it's obviously it's only money in their pocket and makes it a profitable venture. And the more medical offices together usually are like similar like car dealers, they come together and, feed off of each other, so having multi-specialty office buildings helps bring a lot more patients to that site. So I agree with the use.
Trustee Sidor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, I just wanted to commend Mr. Dixon and Charles. I brought these questions forward after the meeting, and some of these questions were brought forward to me by some of the residents, and they quickly researched the information that I asked them to research and came forth with this. Jumped on another condition, talked to the attorney agreed. So thank you very much for that. And I think regarding the process, I think this is a good example of how well the process works, frankly. We have the ability, even after voting for something, to pull it off a consent agenda and look at it yet again in minute detail. When a investor comes before us, a developer, and everything's to code and everything looks good, and there's nothing really, and they've made concessions to the residents, it's hard to vote against it. While I appreciate the residents that have come forth, twice now with their concerns, I can only ask that Dr. Dominici, as you moving forward, as you build if you get approval this evening, as you build this, you continue to listen to them and be cognizant of their concerns and if they have any issues with anything. And thank you. Full disclosure, I spoke with Mr. Dominici, Dr. Dominici also. So we do listen, and we listen to both sides. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other additional comments?
I guess you can't see me hidden way over here.
Trustee Breyer.
Trustees.
At the last meeting, Charles, Bill Enright had said that this project met every code requirement we have, all the setback requirements, floor area ratios. You still stand with that, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Had this been developed, this property as a strip shopping center, which is possible on Rand Road, is it possible that all that might separate the residents from the back of the strip shopping center is a fence and an alleyway similar to behind the annex?
Well, we have a lot of shopping centers, new and old, in Arlington Heights, and due to configuration of the lots and tightness of the depth, that is the screening method that is most used. I could point to dozens of them. Jewel down on Gulf Road, they have a fence there. It's actually a 10-foot fence. They received a variation at the request of the residents, but there's minimal landscaping there. The annex that you referenced, this aerial here shows the center to the east that abuts up to the multifamily. That's, again, minimal setback. They don't have anywhere near the landscape screening that we've been able to work with this developer and get that extra depth and setback and that extra double row of 9-foot evergreens. So this is a significant landscaping compared to many shopping centers and developments throughout the community.
It probably is none of my business, but is there financing involved with this project?
There would be financing, yes.
And so if the financial institutions from which you were seeking funding, if they thought there was an overbuilding, would they be so eager to lend to you?
Absolutely not. And one of the things they've already told me is I'm going to have a good portion of this lease before they would even look at lending the money. So that's one of their own requirements.
I was convinced after all the changes were made to this project the last time that this is the best use that could be made of this land. And certainly there could be far more obtrusive things happening if there were not a project like this. And I truly believe we've gotten the best we can in what is a very busy commercial corridor. And we would be remiss in not approving a project that it appears the builder has gone a long way, the developer's gone a long way in trying to meet the residents' needs. And, you know, at different times, we always, some of us anyway, at least when we're in public, say we would like to have additional business properties to help carry the tax burden. And certainly, this would be a project that has a significant appraised value and one that carries a tax rate that is, what, 2.5 times what a residential property would carry. So at various times, we're out in public saying, we want more business property to help the residents. If we were to turn this down on what is one of the busiest corridors in this village, we're really telling developers that we don't want business property. And no matter what we say when we're out on the campaign trail saying we want business property, we're really telling through our actions people that we're not doing anything to try to gain additional tax-generating properties to assist in carrying the burden. I think this is a great addition to the village. I think the screening that these folks have put in far exceeds what almost anybody else would do. And we should be happy that developers have faith in this community and are willing to develop here and help all of us in our tax burden. So I believe this is the right decision to vote in the affirmative for this project. And as far as Mr. Dixon speaking up, I mean, he is an advisor to us. I'm happy that he spoke up and steered us. It is a manager, that's the appropriate thing to have done.
All right, I see one more hand. Trustee Blackwood?
Yes, from a land use perspective, there's certainly very little questionable areas to discuss. I think when I was looking back on this project a few weeks ago, my concern was very similar to some of the residents that are adjacent to it, where there are significant numbers of unleased offices on the corridor, and certainly the market will take care of it. What's really difficult to argue is the expansion of an existing use that is very, very successful. And I wanted to just take a few minutes to thank Dr. Dominici tonight for coming, because I think from your words, I became very positive and clear about the fact that the illusion or the illusion that this particular property could be the northern campus of the hospital was clearly defined. You said that you weren't speaking for the hospital, you were speaking for the potential of that particular site and its expansion and the uses that would be necessary. And I just wanted to make sure that your partnership with the previously known affinity docs that are now the NWCH docs, you're in full collaborative partnership and you speak for them as well.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay, and you are their real estate or project spokesperson.
Yes, I'm the if you will, managing partner of the real estate group of individuals.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay, with that, I think everyone was spoken, and I know there's been no mention of the one condition that I was concerned about, is the residents obviously wanting a buffer, and they're used to a wooded area. And I would just ask that, I think many comments are made that there could be a more intense use on this property according to its zoning. But we try to be the village of good neighbors, and it helps. So hopefully that commitment for snow piling and things will be camouflaged, so no one has to look at it out of their second floor bedroom within the 2 weeks, if not sooner.
You have my commitment.
Thank you. With that, I think we can call the question, unless staff has any other comments.
Trustee Glasgow?
Yes.
Trustee Hayes?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood?
Yes.
Trustee Breyer?
Yes.
Trustee Farwell?
Yes.
President Mulder?
Yes.
We thank the board and staff for all their time and consideration of this project. You've pointed out why this is the town that it is. It's so good because you do take this time, and we trust and hope that we'll meet your expectations on this project. But thank you very much.
Thank you. We go back to our regular agenda. If I can find it here. New business, I think that's where we come to on page 5 for those in the audience. All right, we have a petition for rezoning. Mr. Dixon?
Yes, this is a village-initiated petition from OP and B5 to PL. Basically, OP is off-street parking, and the proposal is to rezone to public lands. There's also a component of this that involves rezoning a bank parking lot from off-street parking to B5, part of the downtown district, and finally, a preliminary and final plan unit development for the 2 commuter parking lots and open green space along Northwest Highway. I don't believe anything's going to be built as a result of this. This is simply a reclassification of existing uses. The Plan Commission considered this on October 24 and unanimously recommended approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by trustee Hayes, seconded by trustee Glasgow. Any comments or questions? Anyone in the audience? Roll call.
Trustee Hayes?
Yes.
Trustee Glasgow?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor? Trustee Blackwood?
Yes.
Trustee Breyer?
Yes.
Trustee Farwell?
Yes.
President Mulder?
Yes. Motion carries. We now go to item B, Chapter 28, text amendment. Mr. Dixon?
Yes, this follows the prior item and does what the mayor mentioned. It amends the text of Chapter 28, deleting the aforementioned OP district. Plan Commission considered this on August 8 and unanimously recommended approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by trustee Hayes, seconded by trustee Glasgow. Any comments from trustees? Questions? Trustee Farwell?
I had one question here, and looking at all these permitted uses, unfortunately, the page is not marked, but it would be the 3rd page of the permitted uses. Churches, synagogues, and other places of worship, including lodging. It shows as permitted uses in all the residential districts. So they wouldn't have to come to us if they meet all of the requirements?
Trustee Farwell, that's the existing code. This table, unfortunately, is a little confusing. The only thing that's being changed with this motion is the deletion of the OP category. All the other items that are highlighted in here were approved about a month and a half ago by the board, so I apologize for the confusion. And you are correct, churches are currently a permitted use in those residential districts.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of wanted to ask a question. I know it wasn't part of this particular one, but I wanted to kind of highlight that that's, I don't know, I just found that a little bit unusual. But anyway, okay, never mind.
We have a motion and a second. Was there anyone in the audience that wished to address this subject? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Hayes?
Yes.
Trustee Glasgow?
Yes.
Trustee Farwell?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood?
Yes.
Trustee Breyer?
Yes.
President Mulder?
Yes. We now move to item C. Mr. Dixon.
And we're following the same subject matter, just walking it through the code into and out of. This is again a village-initiated petition to amend Chapter 28 definitions and the permitted use table. Plan Commission considered this on October 10, unanimously recommended for approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by trustee Farwell, seconded by trustee Blackwood. Trustee Rosenberg.
Charles, could you clarify the issue of the vehicles? Contractor on-site storage, but where it talks about shall not include on-site storage of contractor vehicle?
Yes, we've created 4 definitions. Currently, there's only one definition in the code, and it creates a lot of confusion. For example, right now we have a contractor's office. It's administrative offices only. They moved into a building on North Arlington Heights Road, but technically, because of the definition we have, they're not allowed there without a land use variation. So we've let them stay there while we clean up this section of the code, and we've created 4 definitions. One being just administrative offices for contractors. So if they have an office, they're just doing their administrative work. It's defined as general office, so they can go in any office zoning districts. They've got no vehicles, they've got no storage, no materials. And then as you ratchet up, it goes all the way up to a construction yard where they have large outdoor storage of materials. That should be in a manufacturing district. We've got a couple of examples on Seegers Road. They may have stone material, they may have lumber that they store outside. And then in between, we've got 2 categories. One where they have a contractor's office, but they also want to keep their vehicles there, and they also want a showroom. And those would be more in a B4 district, like down on Arthur Avenue, where we have a hybrid of uses. And then the last one is a contractor's office with a showroom. So it's just an office, just a showroom. We've got a couple of examples. There's one actually downtown next to California Pizza Kitchen. Technically, it doesn't meet the criteria under our current code, but it's just an office and a showroom. So we try to clean it up so everyone interpreting the code is interpreting it the same way. When we have a contractor come to us and say, I should be in this district, but they point to another contractor, we can go to this definition, and they will fall within one of these 4, and it should help avoid a lot of confusion.
So if I understand this correctly then, so the only place where vehicles can be stored are A, a construction yard, and B, a contractor's shop.
That's correct.
Okay. But if you had a combination where you had both uses, then it would be allowable then? Where you had a shop next to a office or design showroom?
If you had the appropriate zoning, that's correct.
Okay. That's all I needed. Thanks.
Trustee Scaletta.
So Charles, what kind of impact does this have in the downtown? Could a contractor's office and design showroom buy a permit for a contractor's vehicle?
They could not store their contractors' vehicles in the downtown, but if somebody was coming and going, and it was just a regular, that'd be a little difficult to enforce downtown, because if they were just buying a permit and they didn't have a large van that could go in the garage, we would never know. So they could probably do that. But the intent is the large panel truck vehicles, those can't be stored downtown under this definition.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Breyer.
I hate to mention anybody and get, next thing you know, you'll be looking at their place, but we have somebody downtown that sort of has a display area for so-called energy-efficient equipment.
Yes.
Didn't we tell them they could keep a truck down there, or a panel truck or something?
They received a land use variation to be able to allow 1 or 2 vehicles behind the building.
Isn't that at variance sort of with this, and that they're only getting to do this because they have that variation?
Yes, that is correct with that particular building, yes.
But wouldn't there be other folks similarly? I mean, that really is sort of a design showroom there. That's
It is now because of the approval, but typically in many other situations that would not be the type of use we would want in the downtown. And the best example I could give you is down on Arthur by the railroad crossing is a contractor shop with vehicle storage. They have large panel trucks that are stored there overnight, and we would not want that in the downtown. In the example you gave, the parking lot is behind the building, so it's more obscure. People don't see it as much, and that's why they came through and got that land use variation.
Did you want to call the question, Bert?
No. Are you done?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg.
Charles, in the example that Trustee Breyer asked about, wasn't that limited to, I think, wasn't it loading and unloading behind there or something?
They had one or two larger vehicles that they were allowed to keep behind the building, and their on-site storage was limited to one small storage area within the building. They were not allowed any outdoor storage.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? We have a motion and a second. Anything else from staff? Roll call, please.
Trustee Farwell?
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood?
Yes.
Trustee Breyer?
Yes.
Trustee Glasgow?
Yes.
Trustee Hayes?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
President Mulder?
Yes. We now move to page 8. We're working our way through this agenda. D, transitional care management. Mr. Dixon?
At 1200 North Arlington Heights Road, they're seeking an amendment to a preliminary PUD ordinance to allow certain modifications to the approved transitional care management plan unit development. This is a project that was previously approved by the board. The Plan Commission held a public hearing on November 28 and came forth with two motions which they separated. And the vote was separate. The first, which is before the board this evening, pertains to an amendment to the aforementioned ordinance to allow modifications to the building elevations, and that motion was unanimously recommended to the board for approval. The second, and I suspect the board will deal with these separately as well, was to approve an amendment to the ordinance to delete what was then condition number 7, which essentially dealt with length of stay. And on a 6-2 vote, the Plan Commission recommended approval of that amendment. So you probably want to take these one at a time.
This is a project that I believe this board approved about a year ago, possibly something, or how long ago?
In November last year, Mayor.
Okay, and they came back through the Plan Commission and had quite a lengthy discussion on the issue. Is the petitioner present? Would they like to come forward, please?
Hello?
I'm not a speed reader, but it took a long time to get through this. And some good questions, and I'm going to defer to my trustees to start the questioning.
Mayor, if we could
Trustee-
maybe we could focus this, and I'll go ahead and move approval of the first motion.
Okay, that's good.
I would second.
Motion by trustee Hayes, seconded by trustee Farwell. Any comments? It improved the building, actually, that's my comment. Trustee Rosenberg, that's the elevation.
Charles, clarify the easement with the church again, so they will be provided access to parking or not?
Yes, Trustee Rosenberg, there's a driveway connection on the very northwest corner of the property that would connect to the church's parking lot. They have provided a draft of the easement for cross-access and parking for review. They have not closed on the property yet. Once they get all zoning approvals, they would then close on the property, and upon closing, they would then sign, execute, and record the cross-access easement.
So is that limited to any hours of all week long, or just on certain days, or?
It is not restricted, but there is a condition in the preliminary PUD that allows the ability that it could be restricted if there were to be circulation issues.
Okay.
other questions?
No, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions on the first motion? If none, anyone in the audience? Roll call?
Trustee Hayes?
Yes.
Trustee Farwell?
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood?
Yes.
Trustee Breyer?
Yes.
Trustee Glasgow?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
President Mulder?
Yes. Okay, that motion carries. We now move to the second motion in regards to the petitioner as well. And I'd ask for comments or questions from trustees. Who wants to start on this? I know that there was great concern on this issue because the very heart of our approval was based on a condition number 7. And I believe you're here this evening to ask for that to be removed. That's kind of tough. You have the floor.
My name is Brian Clough. I was the original petitioner, and as we move forward with this project, we had a difficult time financing the project. And as part of that process, excuse me, I brought in a development partner, David Weiss, who will speak to the financing part of it. The request to remove this part of it is in relationship to the ability to underwrite the income for the facility based upon sort of the commercial financing markets and the need to go to HUD. We had a long, lengthy discussion about this amendment, and it was in regards to the length of stay that the residents would be there for. When we go through the HUD process, I'll probably maybe turn it over to David, and he can explain that better.
In essence, the request it all centers around the need to remove that because without that, we need that in order to get the HUD 232 project financing approved. Because the restrictive nature of that, even though we fully intend on operating the building as it has been designed and as you all originally contemplated it, the very nature of the language, the way that it was approved, causes a definitional problem that basically disqualifies this from the viable project financing that allows us to move forward, and that's the HUD 232 Construction Permanent Loan Program.
And just to point out, it doesn't change our intent and how we operate the facility. The facility is going to be designed and built and operated only for short-term residents. There will be no custodial or long-term care for these residents. It will still be the same program, everything is the same, but due to this financing requirement, we just can't move forward with that condition in place.
But the condition of approval by the village was based on number 7, so if you take it away, you're taking away the consensus of approval.
Which is why we were asking for that to be changed.
How can we assure that it'll be short-term?
Well, as I detailed in the letter dated November 20, the building is not designed as a long-term care building. There are a lot of improvements, a lot of program modifications that are significantly different. So this really is a building that the brick and mortar construction and the design of it is absolutely suited for a transitional care building. It just doesn't work well as a long-term care building. And when you combine that with the economics of the shorter-term stay, which is what this building is designed for, that is absolutely the best deterrent is the economic model of what this building is designed for.
You used a lot of terminology on percentages, and, you know, I guess one of the questions that I wrote in a margin is, when you went for your certificate of need, what was it granted based on?
The certificate of need is granted for long-term care use. The state, nor the feds, nor anybody else has come to a definition dividing short-term and long-term. So it's just one bucket of skilled nursing. So the facility is licensed for a skilled nursing facility for long-term care. So it's only within the operating methods or style that it changes whether it's short-term or long-term. When this was mentioned, I think it was asked of me, you know, would we be able to move forward with this? And The reason I responded at that time, yes, was not thinking of financing, but knowing that we were only planning on operating the facility on a short-term care basis. We don't operate any facilities that have long-term custodial patients. So from an operating perspective, that's not the business that I'm in. So there's no concern for me on how we operate the building. But when it comes to the financing, I have to admit that I was probably a little bit uneducated in my ability to finance this. So as we move that forward, I sort of ran into a brick wall.
Well, I know I was quite proud of the questioning. The plan commissioners were very thorough.
Yes.
Forgive me, they ask excellent questions, and each time wanted more detail, and I tended to get a little mired in some definitions that were, that we understand in the industry. So thank you for your patience in reading through it.
Well, I can show you. I got all kinds of little questions and circles. And, I guess, how do we protect the integrity of the village in what we think we're approving, and will in fact that be what's built and practiced? What assurance are you going to give us if number 7 is removed?
Well, again, the best mechanism is the economic model of the physical improvements of this building that's being built. I mean, there are many things that are being put into this building that just do not lend well to a long-term care building. And so for the building to move away from transitional care, which is the design model, into a longer-term stay, that is an entirely different economic model that just makes the project unfeasible. And that's why.
And I think also with the last, the language, I know we had a long debate when we work with the staff and the attorneys to come to a language, because it was very difficult to come to a language to do this. And I think the previous ordinance didn't prohibit us from doing it. It just said if we were going to change to long-term care, we'd have to come in front of you again and sort of let you know we're switching the business model to long-term. So I don't think it was a complete, you can't do it. It was, well, you have to appear in front of us.
And ask permission, excuse me.
Yeah.
Just for clarity.
Right.
It's not just come here, it's ask permission.
I'm coming here, I'm asking for permission.
Well, we like the building changes. That was easy. I guess this question, well, I've lost it now, I moved it, from Commissioner Labetz. She felt that we were changing language to do one thing, but in essence, it would, and there was a lot about 51%, 75%, and all this. I just ask for where my fellow trustees are. Trustee Farwell.
I have a question. Hopefully it might flesh the issue out a little bit. Unfortunately, I've had more than my share of nursing home and rehabilitative care facility management visits to all the facilities and serving Arlington Heights residents in the last 18 months. So I only know it from, say, a visitor or a family consumer-oriented point of view. But could you take a few moments, I know it was touched on in the Plan Commission meeting, but probably at this meeting here, and talk to us about the difference, the nuances that you've kind of touched on twice now, on the difference between a facility that's set up for long-term care versus transitional care. Mm-hmm. And that might help alleviate the issue of the removal of number 7.
A couple of things. The facility has no outpatient care provision. In fact, actually, there's a restriction, there's a prohibition in the original preliminary PUD for doing any outpatient care. In addition to that, the entrance canopy, the parking that is done for that is completely different than traditional long-term care buildings that we build. In addition, each resident has a private bath and a shower, and traditional long-term custodial care, you don't have anywhere near that same level. You have more, I'm sorry?
More communal bathing.
Yeah, more communal bathing, right. Therapy space. Therapy space is over 5,000 square feet, and you need that because that is a pure transitional care. That's virtually all of those residents are going through that therapy. So we have almost 5 times the space that traditional long-term custodial care has. That's a lot of square footage that's being devoted exclusively to that. In addition to that, you've got decentralized dining facilities. Again, in long-term custodial care, you have centralized dining facilities. And so that decentralized care caters to that shorter-term stay. And then finally, we've got some very sophisticated medical infrastructure, wired med gas and suction, as well as charging stations. In addition to that, the outpatient or the therapy for the inpatient, a lot of very sophisticated equipment that goes into that. And so when you combine all of those things together, you have a significantly larger investment in that building for that transitional care that just is irrelevant to the long-term care resident.
From a communal living perspective, in a typical long-term care facility, residents are living more in the building and less in their room, where in this building, their short-term residents are more going to stay in their rooms and less in the building. So the common area space is more devoted to therapeutic purposes versus socialization. So people generally are here for a short time. They're, oftentimes stay in the room, go to therapy, come back. And so most of the space, it's really devoted to clinical issues. Okay. So it wouldn't be as appealing to a long-term resident, for sure.
All right, and then let's go through a hypothetical. If you have a patient that was admitted for rehabilitative care, and that patient was making some progress, but then for Medicare protocol purposes in reviewing their health maintenance and their progress, they ceased to make marked improvement. Therefore, Medicare then begins to terminate for that particular stay their coverage. What would your firm do in that situation?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm smiling because it was recently a major law that was a battle I think it was a court ruling that you need not show progress to continue for Medicare to pay for therapy in an inpatient setting. So that's going to be ruled, and we're all as an industry looking at what happens with that because it goes right to the heart of what you're asking about. Let me describe to you what we do in our existing buildings. We operate existing buildings in Chicago where people come in and they meet their therapeutic needs. And actually, to be honest with you, it's more likely that an insurance company will stop paying a benefit and we have to move them out. So in our existing buildings, when it comes to the custodial, we work on discharge planning. So we start discharge planning and transitions the day of admission because we have short-term stays. So we help people transition. And to be honest with you, when I came here the first time, when we presented this project, we were hoping to partner with the Lutheran Home to work on sort of that long-term custodial piece because that's what they do very well at as well. So we'd be partnering with local facilities that do long-term custodial care because our focus will be short-term. And from a financial model perspective, people will understand our building when they move in that it's a short-term, length of stay, and they'll move out. And the rates that we're going to have to get to hit our numbers will make it prohibitive for us to be able to transition them to a custodial environment.
Okay. It's interesting you bring up that case because, again, as of 2 weeks ago, and as a family member talking to a social worker, they don't get that case.
No.
So you're still, from a consumer level, you're still fighting the good fight of you need to show progress.
It's going to be. I'll tell you. I mean, we can talk about it after the meeting, but I'll tell you two things. One is, a citizen of this country, as a taxpayer, we have a lot to worry about if that goes through because Medicare will go bankrupt on its own right now. If that goes through, Medicare will go bankrupt in the next 3 years because the cost of care. It's just unbelievable what will happen to the cost of care in Medicare if that goes through the way it is. So
Everybody will hit their 100-day limits and right off the bat. Right?
Everybody will have 100 days.
Everybody.
And right now, we have in our facilities an average length of stay of between 18 and 22 days. If I can go from 18 to 22 to 100, I would be a much wealthier man, but I'm not sure it's the right thing for the patients. So.
And then the last question, you speak of your other facilities, and you touched on it before in our prior conversations of last year. You touched on the planning commission level on both occasions, but I thought we'd bring it out again. Your prior organizations, your prior outfits that you speak of and you refer to, it's never been part of your business model to have long-term care.
No, as a matter of fact, in both the existing buildings we manage in Chicago, we've removed the custodial long-term care, and we've actually discharged the long-term custodial patients with the family's blessings and assistance, and we moved them to other facilities that specialize in that.
So to suggest that you would then adopt such behavior in the Arlington Heights facility would be a change, a drastic change in your business model.
It would be, yes, it would be drastically.
All right, thank you.
Just full disclosure, I do own an assisted living company, which
It's
is what I
separate.
defined, right. That does long-term custodial.
Right, but it's not, it's
not-
separate and apart.
It's
Because you brought
totally
that up
separate and
before.
apart,
Right, thank you then.
Other questions from trustees? Trustee Breyer?
As I read this, the submission, which was rather lengthy, I get from this that you're asking this change solely to accommodate the financing agencies, and you have no intent to really change the mode of operation that you suggested to us.
That is correct.
Now, my understanding is that long-term care pays less per day than to the institution than what you're proposing in the setting you're planning.
That's correct.
And that just to satisfy HUD, you have to do your pro formas as though you're significantly long-term care. But yet you're planning a building that the cost per square foot of building this thing is significantly greater than long-term care. How will the pro formas work and come out all right with a more costly building at long-term care rates? How will you present that to them? How will it work?
Well, it's a good question. One a clarification that I may make. It's not our pro forma, it's the lender's pro forma. They're the ones that are doing the underwriting. We presented our investment package as a transitional care building. And what's happened is, as HUD is going through their evolution, absolutely transitional care buildings are permitted within their program, anything from no transitional care to 100% transitional care. So it is clearly an approved operating style. But what's happened is that the HUD underwriting criteria for estimating income currently limits 25 to 25% transitional care, and the rest are from all other sources. And so what happens as a result of that is that, and this is where we got into the real technicality, because the original language called for, it stated, if the building is becoming primarily a long-term care facility, then we must come back. And so that was the one of the core dilemmas, is that there's no definition of primary. And the only thing that a HUD underwriter and a closing attorney who will be required to opine on the validity of these documents, primary could only be described as at least 51%. It's the difference between majority and minority. So at 51%, in theory, there's no eligibility for long-term care income. And so what happens is, where we talk about an amount of income is disqualified, it literally is the difference between 50% and 75%. So there's 25% of the potential income of this building that is disqualified because of that limitation. And that's the essence of how, of why it doesn't work.
Yeah, but when you reshuffle the numbers to present, or your lender does, what essentially on paper looks like a long-term care facility, the rates for long-term care are so low, how can they possibly come up with numbers that would show that this facility could make it?
The lender,
or that's not your problem?
Well,
Let me say.
I don't like words like "it's not my problem," because we focus on a team approach and alignment in whatever we do. It's the lender's process. They are primarily focused on making the debt service paid so that they have a satisfactory loan. That's not the same as operating a business model that serves the need that we see in the market, which is transitional care. And so from our perspective, their estimation of the income and expenses that, in their view, works at that 25% level.
Are they going to presume in their cost analysis, long-term care staffing ratio?
Right, well, you just nailed it. 70% of our cost in a project like this is labor. So when you're taking care of short-term patients, we have a staffing ratio of 1 to 10 for a nurse. If you're taking long-term care patients, you're probably 1 to 50 for a nurse. So a nurse at, call it $35, $40 an hour, that changes the numbers on the labor side. So when you go back and you shift to a Medicaid rate or a custodial rate, you drop significant income, but you also drop significant staffing numbers. And also from the medical supplies, all the operating expenses for custodial long-term care patients are drastically different. So that's why it all comes back into line.
I have no other question.
Trustee Scaletta.
I have a question for Charles. Charles, I want to try and use an analogy and you tell me where I go wrong. If a developer wanted to build a center downtown, call it the Arlington Town Square, call it Village Green, and the village board said, great, you can put in retail in all those first floor spaces, but you can't put any restaurants in. And because we think there's too many restaurants, and when the developer goes to get funding for it, the lender's looking at it going, well, what if you can't rent it out all to retail? Now you have nowhere to go because you can't get restaurant. Is it a fair analogy of how this kind of plays out at all?
I don't know.
Somewhat. I guess the question is that they're suggesting that they have no intent to do this, and I think that we ultimately, because if you look at the minutes, this came up at the very end of our discussion after hours and hours of people coming forward telling us how much they wanted to see this happen and how much they wanted to see Lutheran Home stay. And at the very end, there was discussion of whether or not we should just throw that in there because they said that they didn't want to have long-term care. That was not what they wanted to do. And they, then we said, or one of us said, hey, will you agree to that? And they said yes, not understanding the ramifications of when they go to get financing that someone's saying, well, hey, you don't have an exit strategy. If this doesn't work, then what are we going to do with the building? Does this become, a Courtyard by Marriott? Because really, what do you have there? You have a building that, there's no other use for. I'm trying not to oversimplify this, but that really seems like where we're going. No offense to the line of questioning that you had, but isn't that really what this issue is?
I think the last part, yes. It's really allowing the developer more flexibility on the long-term use of the facility as either a short-term or a long-term. They're saying they're only going to operate it short-term, take that condition out, it could be short or long. If they wanted to change it to apartments, hotel, motel, anything else, they would have to come back to the village, but they would not if they went from short to long-term.
Okay. I think that the design of this is set up that it definitely would be for short-term, as we talked about, kind of the communal spaces. I've been to Lutheran Home a number of times, and there's lots and lots of open spaces, and there's a common dining room. There's other rooms. There's a cafeteria, or I should call it a cafe. There's even a chapel. None of those things exist in here. Obviously, they could try and take the middle of this development and make it something communal, but I just don't see it being set up for long-term care. And if this comes down to financing this development, I still think that this is a good use for this property, and I'm sad that it's not being built on already. So I'd like to see it move forward.
Trustee Sidor?
This is an easy one. Thank you, Mayor. If we move forward with this evening, what are your chances of getting the financing through the program you're discussing? Is it pretty good?
Extremely good.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
Any other comments from trustees? Trustee Rosenberg?
So is there another lender involved with this, or is it just strictly HUD and And they take the rest of the financing, or?
No, there is not another lender. What happens is, from a technical perspective, HUD is actually not the lender. The lender is, in this case, it's capital funding, and I've done lots and lots and lots of projects with this lender. HUD provides the insurance so capital funding is the lender, and under the HUD 232 program, HUD provides insurance for the mortgage bonds that are sold that create the funding.
So it's somewhat similar to like an SBA type, where there's a intermediary between the SBA and the third party. And
Yes, in this case, it's, well, I guess that is the case in SBA. That is, the intermediary is the lender, but obviously they're making the loan based on the insurance that's given through HUD.
And your lender, I forget the...
Capital funding?
Yeah, capital funding, they're satisfied with your models or whatever that you've presented to them?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I'd move approval.
Second. Motion by trustee Rosenberg, seconded by trustee Breyer. Robin?
I don't know if this is going to help in terms of comfort level, but all PUDs, the specific plans provided by the petitioner are listed in the PUD ordinances themselves, and the development has to occur in substantial compliance with those plans. So from what I'm hearing and from what I read at the Plan Commission, if they were to switch this to a long-term care facility, it would require some pretty significant modifications to the building as a whole, which just, based on the way our ordinances are drafted, they couldn't just do, because the building has to remain in substantial compliance with the plans that are approved as part of the PUD. So if they were to, essentially have to gut and redo all that space in order to accommodate long-term care, they would have to come back through the village anyhow to amend the PUD.
I just remember they had all the rooms with windows to look out at gardens. Trustee Scaletta.
Quick point of clarification, because I'm confused after listening to you and reading the minutes. Capital funding would not give you the financing, or HUD would not insure the development?
Both. And if I may, everyone's heard of Ginnie Mae Securities? Ginnie Mae Securities are basically these securities that capital funding sells in the open marketplace that creates the mortgage money that's then lent to us. Those Ginnie Mae securities are only purchased by the institutional investor marketplace because those securities come backed by a HUD insurance policy on the mortgage. So that's a clarification. That's how the program works. It's worked that way for several decades, really as long as the program has been alive.
Thank you.
How many of your other facilities that either of you have used the 232 loan program?
Many. I've been involved in over 100.
And it's still going to exist next week? Better hurry.
Yes. An editorial comment, ironically, of all the different housing initiatives that HUD is involved in, one of the single most profitable ones is the skilled nursing industry. And that is the one with far and away the fewest losses. And in fact, statistically, I understand that the 232 skilled nursing program actually carries a surplus in the reserves that HUD requires to be set aside to cover loan losses across the entire portfolio. It is a very profitable program and serves a really valuable purpose in an otherwise difficult environment to get financing in.
Brian, I think you got in a new guy, a good guy here. Any other comments? We have a motion.
Yes.
And a second. Anything else from staff? Any other comments from you? Ready for the vote? Roll call.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Breyer?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood?
Yes.
Trustee Farwell?
Yes.
Trustee Glasgow?
Yes.
Trustee Hayes?
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
President Mulder?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hurry up.
Okay.
I don't know if you want these, Brian, the copies. Okay. Trying to recycle here.
Okay. That took care of E? No, that was E. We have E. Now we have the transitional care final planned unit development. Mr. Dixon?
Yes, as the mayor indicated, that's what this item is. It follows logically from the one the board just approved. It was considered by the Plan Commission on November 28th. By a vote of 7-1, the Plan Commission recommended approval with conditions of the final plan unit development.
Okay, somebody has to respond to the questions. Do you agree with all the conditions?
The conditions as stated in the agenda are agreeable to the developer and design team.
We need your name.
Oh, sorry, Kyle Darnell.
Okay. Questions, comments?
Yeah,
Trustee
what's your role?
Scaletta?
I'm sorry, what's your role?
Oh, sorry, we're the design build general contractor for the developer.
Okay, just didn't know if they were sending just somebody up or.
Guy off the street.
Yeah, here, you go up and answer.
You're just trying to get in on this good deal, right?
Move approval?
Motion
Second.
by trustee Blackwood, seconded by trustee Farwell for approval. No questions? Nobody in the audience? Staff? Roll call.
Trustee Blackwood?
Yes.
Trustee Farwell?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
Trustee Glasgow?
Yes.
Trustee Hayes?
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Breyer?
Yes.
President Mulder?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You look nervous.
No.
All right. Number E. Okay, it's done. Legal ordinances, tax levy, what we all love. Mr. Dixon?
There are 4 items needing the board's consideration this evening. My recollection is that Mr. Siegel has requested over the years that we vote on these separately. It is one package, but I suspect we will, as we should, follow his advice. The tax levy ordinance and the tax abatement ordinances were discussed at the November 13 Committee of the Whole meeting and the November 19 formal meeting. To set the stage or give some context for the village's tax levy ordinance, the village comprises about 11.5% of a homeowner's total tax bill. The total proposed tax levy, including the library and debt service levies, reflects a 1.2% increase over the prior year level, and that is down from a staff recommendation following 2 reviews of this subject by the board. So the board chose to reduce this based on a number of factors which elected officials rightly need to reflect when they deal with the community. That is not to say that Mr. Keeney and I were oblivious to the community, but I think the board refined our thinking in this one, and we understand. The general corporate taxes have been levied only for police and fire salaries. In addition to the tax levy, the abatement ordinances are, as I said, part of this package. We are abating debt service levies in the amount of $1,083,975 because revenue is available from other sources to pay the debt. What that means is that we're not going to levy property taxes for that amount because we have other revenue sources. This matter, after 2 thorough discussions by the board, I believe is ready for your consideration and reflects the board's direction.
I think we did have a 2-hour discussion on this, the committee of the whole meeting. We'd ask if there's any additional comments from trustees.
I'd move approval of the 2012 tax levy ordinance.
Second.
Motion by trustee Hayes, seconded by trustee Glasgow. Anybody in the audience wish to speak to this? We've got only the press left, almost. We have a motion and a second. Anything else from staff? Roll call.
Trustee Hayes?
Yes.
Trustee Glasgow?
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood?
Yes.
Trustee Breyer?
Yes.
Trustee Farwell?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
President Mulder?
Yes. We need number 11, 12, and 13. Do you need to speak to those, Mr. Dixon?
No, I covered him in the introduction.
Okay, trustee Scaletta.
An ordinance abating taxes in part levied for the year 2012 heretofore levied to pay principal and interest on $2.6 million general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2003A, and on $3,330,000 in general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2003B, totaling $5,930,000 of the Village of Arlington Heights.
Second.
Motion by trustee Scaletta, seconded by trustee Hayes. Any comments? Roll call, please.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Hayes?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood?
Yes.
Trustee Breyer?
Yes.
Trustee Farwell?
Yes.
Trustee Glasgow?
Yes.
President Mulder?
Yes. Item 12.
Move approval of an ordinance abating taxes levied for the year 2012, heretofore levied to pay principal and interest on $2,235,000 general obligation bonds, Series 2005 of the Village of Arlington Heights.
Second.
Motion by trustee Hayes, seconded by trustee Scaletta. Any comments? Roll call.
Trustee Hayes?
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood?
Yes.
Trustee Breyer?
Yes.
Trustee Farwell?
Yes.
Trustee Glasgow?
Yes.
President Mulder?
Yes.
I
And
move-
finally,
I move approval of an ordinance abating taxes levied for the year 2012, heretofore levied to pay principal and interest on $2,885,000 general obligation bond series 2010 of the Village of Arlington Heights.
Second.
motion by trustee Farwell, seconded by trustee Glasgow. Any additional comments? Trustee Scaletta?
Just for clarification, is $2,855,000?
Yes.
Okay. I heard 885.
No, 855.
Just for
Sorry.
motion purposes.
Okay. Clarity, roll call.
Trustee Farwell?
Yes.
Trustee Glasgow?
Yes.
Trustee Hayes?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood?
Yes.
Trustee Breyer?
Yes.
President Mulder?
Yes. I'd just like to make the comment that I want to thank the board members for, I think, their interaction with staff and the proposal. And specifically, I think trustee Rosenberg did some pencil writing and figured out how to get from 1.9 to 1.2. And I think that certainly clearly indicates the importance and the understanding of members of this board of the economic challenges our residents have. And we're trying to be as lean and mean as possible. And I think all of you need to be commended, but to my right here, trustee Rosenberg and his pencil is always looking for another way to save a few dollars. So thank you, trustee Rosenberg.
Thank you.
I think we've done item 14, or we didn't have appointments tonight, but we did have some petitions and communications from anybody. I know that we've got celebrations coming up in the month of December, so those are happening, but I know, anybody have any petitions or communications to convey?
The Santa's Run was an incredible success.
Santa Run, over 2,000 Santa Clauses, you know. And, you know, the only thing that I just note that I've been invited to attend a contribution to be made tomorrow for the Sandy campaign to raise money to help those victims of that horrible storm in New York. It's going to be tomorrow. The Rorman Group has collected $100,000 that they're going to be sending. So I'm glad, and I know that California's getting beat right up now with more and more rain. So there's a lot of homes that are being threatened there as well. So it's been a challenge. Any other comments? Report of the village manager. Mr. Dixon.
Thank you. Tonight, we're asking the board to hold a closed session per 5 ILCS 120/2C21, discussion of minutes lawfully closed, and 5 ILCS 120/2C11, litigation.
So moved. Second.
Motion by trustee Hayes, seconded by trustee Scaletta, to go into closed session for the ILCS, so stated by Mr. Dixon. Roll call.
Trustee Hayes.
Yes?
Trustee Scaletta.
Yes.
Trustee Glasgow.
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg.
Yes.
Trustee Sidor.
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood.
Yes.
Trustee Breyer.
Yes.
Trustee Farwell.
Yes.
President Mulder.
Yes. Anything else from staff? Motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Motion by Farwell, seconded by Rosenberg. All those in favor
Okay.
signify by into closed session.
We don't, okay, well, we just kind of did that.
We did,
Go
when
ahead.
we voted, so we're done.
We don't need it.
Okay.
We'll double that vote.
We'll double that one.